And the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, like I said, welcome to our Tuesday, September 6th school board meeting. It's nice to have all of you back up at the table with us, so welcome. With that, we'll move right into Mrs. Mucha for the agenda approval, deletions, additions.
We only have one addition tonight, and that's under Section 7, Part B, under Mine, Human Resources.
Move to approve the agenda?
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin. Second. Second by Ms. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Kelly, is there any correspondence this evening?
There is none to report this evening.
Thank you. We'll move right into our liaison committee updates. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Madam President. Under Personnel Interview Committee, nothing to report at this point.
Thank you. Mrs. Kelly?
Yes, I'm going to lump together my redevelopment and my parks report because I have a joint project to kind of discuss. Ileana, everybody's familiar with that parcel in Cherville. The town council, we had a joint session with them, the Parks Department Board and Cherville Town Council, and we have been given the go-ahead to develop that into additional parks. So it's being researched right now, and plans are coming up, so we're all very excited about that. And that's it.
Thank you. Dr. Medlin?
Nothing to report, thank you.
And as for Dollars for Scholars, we had the call-out meeting last week. If you need to register, please see Mrs. Resnick. I'm sorry, I don't know her room number, but I think she's telling me 122. So right over here across from the pub's classroom. So thank you. With that, we'll move on to our official school board business topics consent agenda. Mrs. Mucha.
Thank you. I'm asking for approval of the minutes from the executive session, which was held on August 15th, the special board meeting on the 15th, and the regular board meeting on the 15th. Also, approval of claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures.
Motion to approve those items.
We have a motion by Mrs. Kelly. Mrs. Kelly?
Second?
Second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
And there are no public comments regarding action items, so we'll move right into our official school board business topics. And I believe you're going to do a little bit of Dr. Veracruz?
I am.
Thank you.
We are going to table the Indiana Learns and the open house teacher messaging for next time, but we do want to bring up we are required by Indiana code to announce that we're ready to begin formal negotiations with LCTA on September 16th, 2022, which is the first legal date that we can begin negotiations. We have our LCTA representative from the negotiating committee with us this evening, Nick Meyer. We will be negotiating wages, salaries, and fringe benefits as we do every year. We're asking our public at this time for any comments they would like to make concerning these negotiations. Seeing none, we will begin our negotiations after that September 16th date. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll move right into Director of Human Resources Personnel, Mrs. Mucha.
Thank you. I am asking for approval for the personnel recommendations that were in your packet.
Move to approve the personnel recommendations?
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin.
I'll second that.
Second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. I'm also asking for the professional leave requests to be approved that were in your packet.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Marshall, and I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move right along to our Director of Primary Education, Dr. Bracy.
Good evening. I am coming before you tonight seeking approval for the professional leave requests you have in your packets.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Ms. Kelly,
Second.
second by Dr. Medlin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. Also, for the first time ever, I am so excited. I get to request approval for field trip requests in your packets. I'm so excited.
Move to approve the field trip request.
Second.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin and a second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion?
Just that I want to go on this one.
Where they going?
Windmill Acres Pumpkin Patch.
You're right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our Director of Secondary Education, Mrs. Castaneda.
Thank you. For my first item, I am seeking your approval for the professional leave requests that were in your board packet.
Motion to approve?
Motion by Ms. Kelly. And I will second that. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. And for my second item, I am also seeking approval for some fabulous field trips that we are finally bringing back this year.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Marshall,
Second. Oh, sorry, Jenny.
second by Dr. Medlin. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Move right along to our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Gramala.
My only item tonight is to seek approval for the professional leave requests that were included in the board packet.
Motion to. We have a motion by Mr. Marshall and a second by Ms. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that'll bring us right to Director of Business Services, Mr. James, and I believe he's doing a presentation.
I will be after my first item. My first item is to seek your approval for the
That's right.
donations that were listed in your board packet.
Move to,
I'm sorry, Jennifer, yours.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin,
I'll second.
a second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to move to the mic and do the budget presentation for 2023. What is on the screen is what is at your station, so if you would like to move, you can. If you want to stay, you can do that as well. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, members of the board, public, thank you. So we're here to discuss the calendar year 2023 budget for the school corporation. We're going to go over the budget calendar. We're going to talk about our capital projects plan, our bus replacement plan, funds to be raised. I'll give you a little historical comparison, how these numbers compared to the history, and then give my recommendation for the board. So here we are on September 6th. After tonight's meeting, we will publish on the Gateways system, the state gateway system, the notice of our public hearing. We will have a public hearing on the budget on our regularly scheduled board meeting on September 19th, and then the board will formally adopt the budget at our regular meeting on October 17th. So just to remind everybody, the budget is a calendar year budget, even though most of us in the room operate on a school year, fiscal year. But we received our 2022 budget on December 27th. Our net assessed valuation, which is the value of all the properties in our school district, is just over $5 billion. We've exceeded the $5 billion amount here for the first time. And when you look at the gross AV, which also includes residents and areas that are within a TIF district, those is about $5.6 billion. So our net AV increased by about $250 million, 5.1% from 21 to 22, and that was the same amount for the referendum funds as well. So what does that mean? When you have a higher assessed value, it could mean less. It means less a lower tax rate for our residents. Preliminary indications are that our assessed value is going to increase actually 9.5% from 22 to 23, which is a huge jump. But it's all market driven. It's all based on the values of homes, values of commercial property, and if we've seen anything in the last few years is the skyrocketing cost of homes and the value of homes, and that's exactly what that is based on. Just want to give the board a quick review that about 15 months ago, the state of Indiana passed their biannual budget, and they increased funding for K-12 tuition support by over $1 billion, which was the largest increase in state history. It was a 4.6% increase for this year and another 4.3% in funding for next year. The foundation amount, which is the basis of how much each school district gets per kid, that also increased, and that goes to all school districts. And you can see where complexity money and special ed grants also increased. So again, I will reiterate how grateful we were to the General Assembly for pushing this money into the K-12 pie. They will be doing the same thing again and starting in January, and that will be the long budget session going through May. I'm not necessarily expecting increases by this amount, but hopefully we'll still be able to get more funding put into the pot. This is just a quick illustration of how much the K-12 pie has been in the state budget. Just up to 5-6 years ago, it was just over $7 billion. Now it's up to 8.2 for this fiscal year. And you can correspondingly see how much funding we get per student. And this year, we're just over $6,500 per kid. It's all about your ADM count and how many students you have. And the more kids you have, the more expenditures you're going to need, and so forth. So when we're preparing the budget for calendar year 23, everything is based on revenue. Just like your household, your expenditures have to be based on what your income is. And so when we're preparing the budget for what our expenditures are going to be, not only for this year, but for the beginning of next school year, we're really trying to figure out what that revenue is going to be. But that comes with some challenges, because the revenue we get for this year from July through December is going to be based on our September ADM count, which hasn't even happened yet. And that will be on September 16th. And then the first half of 23 is going to be based on the February 23 count. And a year from now, when we're doing the fall count in September of 23, that determines our funding for July through June of 23. Oh, and by the way, as I mentioned, they're going to change the formula for depending how much we get in 10 months from now. So when we're trying to figure out the revenue for 23, we're really just using the best information we have now. We're using what we see as the trend, what we have as our enrollment, graduation sizes, incoming kindergartners. We take that all into consideration in order to try to estimate. However, we have no idea what's going to go on in Indianapolis in the long session. I don't see us being cut, but it's hard to estimate how much additional funds we're going to get. Speaking of class sizes in ADM, one of the challenges that we have now is that our graduating classes are hovering around 800 students each. And that's been that way for a while now, and that is still the trend. Our high school classes are all around that size. However, we have approximately 600 kids coming in as kindergartners. So our overall cohort population of students is decreasing. As of now, or excuse me, as of last week, we're looking to be down approximately 120 students compared to last year. And that doesn't mean that kids left and they moved, because we get an influx of kids. In fact, when you have 800 going out and 600 coming in, you would think that our loss would be more. But we are a destination of choice, and we get a lot of move-ins from the parochial schools and from other people who want to come and bring their kids here. And so that's why our loss is not 200 kids per year. Doing the math, at $6,500 per kid, That equates to about $780,000 less revenue for this fiscal year if we would have maintained a steady amount of enrollment. But we know this, and it's all based on facts and information that you have at the time. So as much as we hate being down 120, we can see this coming. And in fact, it's probably going to be the trend for the next couple of years because we know that the class sizes in all 4 of our grade levels that we have here at the high school are all still hovering those 780, 790, 800 kids. So unless there's a big rash of influx of kindergartners, we're probably we might be losing 100 kids a year. And we then base our expenditures accordingly based on that projected revenue. So I want to take a quick moment and talk about circuit breaker. You hear about units of government losing revenue to the circuit breaker caps that are in the Constitution. Lake County and St. Joe County had an exemption for 10 years from 2010 through 2020. But since we have a higher AV and low tax rates for our community, our circuit breaker loss is not that much. It is this past year, or here in 2022, we're just a little over $205,000 of lost revenue. And $205,000 is a lot of money, and it seems like a lot of money, but it's only about 0.5% of our total tax revenue. Here's a little comparison of the 16 school districts in Lake County and how much money they are losing annually to the circuit breaker. So the first column of the levy this is how much tax dollars they need to raise in order to meet their operating costs. And if you take Gary, for example, almost 45%, $25 million is coming off the top that is not even being billed to the constituents in their area. So if you work your way down, where you can see that our 0.5% is very low compared to others. Hanover, because of the growing population they have there, a lot of construction, their assessed value has gone up, and therefore they do not have as much of a circuit breaker loss. And this is just the same data in a nice colorful graph. And you will see us at the very bottom, toward the bottom there in blue. Any questions so far? All right, the next thing we want to talk about is our capital projects plan. State law requires us that we come up with a capital plan for improvements or large dollar items that we plan to do over the next 3 years. The key word here is plan, is because things always pop up and you're always got a plan and then you just never know what's going to happen. So I work with our director of facilities who works with the head custodians at each of the buildings and the school principals to determine, what are things that we really need. For our first priority is always health and safety issues. Bill uses that judgment, and then him and I get together and we come up with a plan. So here in 2023, we always put an allocation in our operating fund for asphalt or roof repairs. This is not replacing a roof. This is, we've got a leak, or we have to just do a patch. Same thing with asphalt. We put an allocation in to replace desks and chairs because it's furniture and we've got a lot of kids. The furniture gets worn over years, so we put some money in the budget for that for when it comes up. The problem with that is it's difficult to get desks and chairs now from any supplier just because it's the world we live in for many products. But hopefully that will turn around. We're looking to replace the intercom system and do some painting at Grimmer. At Holman, we're looking to paint the gym and continue carpet replacements. At Coling, the front of Coling was paved this year, and we want to finish that off next year, and I believe do the backside and on the round. Then we'll look to paint the gyms at Coling and Pfeiffer, some more painting, and replacing some doors at Watson. It's a little scaled down this year because of how much we did this year. As you can recall seeing Bill's 4 or 6 page list of all the summer projects we did. We've spent a lot of money really getting our schools in some great shape. So some of these things, besides the intercom system, are more cosmetic, some things that need to be done. In 24, some of the same things. We're looking to maybe remodel the locker room at Kaler, some gym painting at Bibbich, a new sign at Holman, roof replacements at Holman and Pfeiffer. Protzman has talked about putting in a concrete playground in one of the coves. And then painting the gym at Watson would be then the last gym. We would do 3 of them in 23, 2 of them in 24. Protzman doesn't need to be painted because it's less than 10 years old. And then for 25, again, the bigger projects there would be to replace the gym floor and the bleachers at Kaler. We've had some issues there in the past, but they're working fine now. And but it's something we want to keep on our radar and to potentially budget money for. We're looking at potentially converting the playground to a parking lot at Clark. But each year it seems how sometimes that's used more, sometimes it's used less. So there's no real hard need to do that at this point. For the last couple of years, we've put money in the budget for the old special ed offices at Holman Elementary. It is used now in the special needs programs, and they take kids in there and do things, but we never know what's going to come up, so we would have put some money aside just in case there's a need that comes up at Holman, maybe a program moves there, that we can renovate that area. There are no immediate plans for what that would be done, and that's why it's a few years down the road. And then items. These would be items that cost $10,000 or more, or estimated to cost $10,000 or more. Everything costs more these days in the last year or two, and so these are just based on the estimates that we have at this time. In 2023, we're looking at a new maintenance trailer, a new gator at Clark, a scrubber at Bibbich, potentially a new delivery van, and one of those snow removal tractors with the brushes at Coling to help clear snow and sidewalks. In 24, potentially a new maintenance van, a new gator, and a ride-along scrubbing machine. And then for 25, an additional riding lawnmower and a snowplow with a spreader. As you can imagine, with the salt that our guys deal with each year, those dump trucks go through a lot, and the salt just eats it away. So, any questions on the capital plan as we've presented so far?
Rob,
Yes.
I have a very generalized question. I'll admit it probably should be a question that Bill Ledger would answer, but unfortunately he's not here. I'm going to throw it out there, and if you have any comment on it, in terms of capital project plans, they have cooling towers at a school like Grimmer, correct?
We do have cooling towers on some of our buildings.
On
Exactly
some of
how
the
it works. It might be all, but I know on some. For sure.
Okay, on some of them. I hear from time to time there's incidences of Legionnaire disease found in similar facilities, like in a Veterans Administration home and that. Do we have a monitoring process for these cooling towers that gives us advance notice of any potential problem? It just entered my mind, I thought I'd ask.
I have no idea.
Good.
So that
Fair
is
enough.
a question for Bill. He is all mechanical and facilities.
Okay,
But we will relay that question to him, and he will get an answer for you.
I thought since you might be paying the bill on such a thing. Okay, I'll
No.
back off.
I know there is, speaking of, not to go off on a tangent, but those cooling towers sit on the roofs, and they're subject to water evaporation.
Right.
And so the towns work with not only us, but all buildings in the towns that have those cooling towers to modify the water bills, because what's going through the meter isn't necessarily because of evaporation
Gotcha.
and so forth. But we work with them, and it's all clean on that. So.
Fair enough.
Okay. Next, we're going to go over the bus replacement plan. We are required to do a 5-year plan. This used to be 12 columns and 12 years, but the law was changed just to make it a 5-year plan now, even though you'll see on the next few slides that we do list all of our 90-some buses on the list. And so one of the things that has happened in the last year is this rise of bus prices. 10, 20% cost more for a bus now than what we even ordered a year ago at this time. In fact, most school districts across the state had to modify their order that they placed in September because of the rising costs that have come in from the manufacturers. So we've increased the pricing here for 23 and 24 replacement costs because of just how crazy it is right now, hoping that once the supply chains get back to normal and we can get buses in a more timely fashion, then the prices will decrease to the levels we've historically seen. They go up every year, but instead of costing $120,000, now we're looking like close to $135,000, $140,000 per bus. So, and we don't get any additional money for that, so we have to make way, and that's why we come up with a budget. So, just scrolling through, we have a list of all, again, 90-some buses. I have it here at the end of 2023 to potentially add another mini white bus. It wouldn't be replacing a current one. I believe we currently have 4, but we're looking to potentially add an additional bus because, one, you don't need a CDL license to drive those. And so maybe with the labor shortage and it being hard for us to find bus drivers and everybody to find bus drivers, if maybe for some of those after-school activities, if we can maybe ask a coach if they're willing to potentially drive a bus, or someone in an office can drive that. They get properly trained, but you don't need to go get the full-fledged license. So we're throwing out that idea that if we had another bus, it might help open up some schedules, or maybe there's even a small route that we can fit those kids on. We'll see. We also don't know what the time frame and the lead on that is for getting a mini white bus as compared to a regular full-fledged bus at this point. So, okay, so now I'm going to get into the actual budget numbers. So we have 6 funds that we establish a budget for: our education fund, operations fund, our referendum operating fund, and then we have 3 debt service funds. And this is, you see this every year. This is what I call the 16-line statement, because there's 16 lines, and really that's the basis for it. The form on the DLJF site has been now changed, but I do like this format better because it really shows you the computations. So the first 5 lines, you're estimating what your expenditures are going to be the following 12-month period of 2023 in this case, how much you're going to need from July 1 through December 31st of this year, and then on the lower half is, okay, well, for example, in our operations fund, if we felt our need next year is $25 million, we're going to have $13 million of expenditures for this 6-month period currently now, so we have a need of $38 million. So then it's like, well, how much cash did we have on hand at July 1? How much tax money are we going to get in December when everyone pays their taxes in November? How much miscellaneous revenue is going to come in over the same time frame? And then therefore, well, if we have 38 million in need and we have 25 million of what is already coming in, then we need to raise how much money in order to have an operating balance and levy our taxpayers. And in this case, the operations fund would compute to a levy of $18 million, a little bit more than that. Our referendum fund would be 10.7. The education fund is 0 because there is no tax levy from our taxpayers for our education fund. That is fully funded, well, let me rephrase that, not fully funded. It is entirely funded by the state. And we are at the mercy of the school funding formula that we talked about earlier. So our debt service funds, those dollar amounts are very straightforward. They're based on what is the debt that we have out there for common school loans that we do twice a year for technology. It is based on GEO bonds that we do. It is the referendum capital fund is our referendum bonds that we sold in 2012, and what are our debt payments are there. So these are all, we make semi-annual debt payments, and then these amounts here represent what our debt payment is going to be in calendar year 2023. And then just working the math down of how much money do we have now, how much money do we need to raise. As you know, especially on these other funds, we don't exactly know what is going to happen at the state for funding-wise. We don't exactly know what the assessed value is going to do. So in order to protect ourselves, we advertise high. We don't expect to spend $66 million based on what our current expenditures are. However, what if the state put 8% more money in the formula? We don't know that, but they may say, hey, there's 8% inflation, we want to put that money in. Well, then that'd be an influx of money that we need, that we'll have to us to be able to use. And if I would put a lower number there, then we wouldn't be able to spend more than that lower number. So when it comes to the education fund and the operations fund and the referendum operating fund, it is, we advertise a little bit high just to protect ourselves, to make sure that we capture all the dollars that can come to us. So as a comparison, these were the advertised amounts in 2022, and these are the amounts I am seeking your approval for to advertise for 2023. We've slightly increased the education and the operations and the referendum operating fund as we do each year. The debt service payments are higher. For the debt service fund itself, it went up $1.2 million per year, and that's because of the GEO bonds we sold last year for the upcoming Bibbage project. And so we said at that time that it was going to cost approximately 2 cents on the tax roll, and if you look down here, it is almost exactly 2 cents higher as an advertised rate. Our pension debt fund is very close to what it was last year, as is our referendum fund. It's only $1,000 difference. This next slide shows just a little bit of historical data for the past 6 years, comparing what we advertised through this process, and then once the DLGF actually certifies what the budget is based on the real AV, based on the actual revenue, and what it is. And you can see that this advertised rate, even here last year when we advertised 92.33 cents, the real rate came in at just under at 79 cents. So here when we're advertising 94, the real rate will probably be somewhere in the low 80s. But again, we do it to protect ourselves and not leave any dollars on the table that we can put them back into the classrooms. This is again just a similar data showing the breakdown per fund historically, and then the bottom chart shows how the assessed value of the properties in our district has increased over the last 6 years. That is shown by the red line on the bottom. It is steadily increasing. I'm expecting it to increase because there's actually like a 2-year lag on those assessed values. It's based on home sales in 21 is we are told now in 22, which will affect the AV that we use for the budget in 23. And as we've seen, home sales now, even with rising interest rates, are still booming. And so we don't know what the trend is going to be, but the assessed value has continued to increase, which is good because as you can see on the bottom line, our tax rate has stayed very steady and actually slightly gone down here in the last few years. So my recommendation is the same that was appeared on the other forms, is to have a budget estimate of $66 million for the education fund, $25 million for the operations fund, $12.5 million for the referendum operating fund. Our debt service fund would be $7,794,463. The pension bond fund would be $1,327,934. And the referendum debt fund, $12,397,500. Again, just as a summary, those budget estimates would then be posted into the Gateway public access system. We'll have a public hearing again at our next meeting on September 19th to go over the budget, the CPP plan, the bus plan, and then we would adopt formally at the board meeting on October 17th. This is a little bit of a snapshot of what the state's gateway system looks like. Has those same numbers as listed below. It goes over the dates that we just talked about here as well. So that's what I have. So I will now turn it over to the board in case you have any questions about what was in your packet or what you saw on the screen at this time. You do?
Rob, before you sit down, I just want to make a general comment. I'm sure my fellow board members join with me in complimenting you on putting together a wonderful bird's eye view and understandable with illustrations, et cetera, exactly where we're at.
Well, thank you. And we do share the quarterly financial spreadsheet with you. We want to be in the loop with you all the time. As we've reported to you before, we share that same spreadsheet with our cash flows. We share that with our teachers union all the time because we are just open and transparent with them. And when times are good, we want to give as much money to them when we'll go through that negotiating process here. So it's an open book for the board and for the teachers union as well. And so I appreciate the compliment, but I would also say that it is a complete team effort, and it is getting input from, you saw the facility side, it's working with Dr. Varacco, Mrs. Mucha, and our curriculum directors, because things have changed in the last few years. We're adding this, we're adding that, we're addressing learning loss, we're doing things, and they'll come to me about, hey, can we find money for this? Can we find money for this? And yeah, it's kids first, and we all work together. So yeah, I can put the spreadsheet together, and I can put that, but it's everybody. So.
Thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
So our buses, the yellow ones, they will continue to be, anything that we order will still be the natural gas that we're,
Well, we've been buying mainly propane.
propane, excuse me, thank you.
Buses
Propane.
for the last 6 years or so. We've been fortunate enough to get grants to offset the cost. Well, who knows what it is going to be now, but it used to be about $10,000 more for a propane bus than a traditional, what used to be a diesel bus. We got a state grant for 2 or 3 years that covered the cost of that. And then we haven't gotten the state grant recently, but instead we've been able to get money from the Volkswagen VW environment settlement money, pretty much serving the same purpose, to put more energy efficient vehicles on the road. And so we're getting grant money for that as well. So talking with our mechanics, I think last year, it was 7 propane, and then the other 3 were were gas buses. We are moving away from diesel engines because they're just harder for the mechanics to work on, and they're very time and not cost effective, where traditional gasoline wasn't available in buses until recently. So we're always going to buy some gasoline buses because we got buses that are going pretty far distances, and until you can pull up to any corner station and get a refueling of propane, we need to have those buses that can go those longer distance that we know we can pull in and get. So we still like that propane route. Our bus drivers really like them. They're very safe. They're quiet. They start like that in the winter. And so it's wonderful.
So is that the same for the white buses? Are they just gas?
The white
diesel?
buses, we haven't bought white buses since, I don't think we've bought a white bus since we started this propane program. I don't know if that is an option for them, or if those would be potential just gasoline ones as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
And that's it?
Any other questions? All right, so at this point, I've just asked the board's permission to allow me to advertise what was presented to you.
Move that we allow the advertisement of the 2023 budget.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin,
Second that motion.
second by Mr. Marshall. Any other discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we have no public comments, so we'll move right on to our board comments and consideration of future agenda items. Mr. Marshall?
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kelly?
Nothing really, just hope everybody's off to a great start with the new school year.
Great. Dr. Medlin?
Nothing, thank you.
All right, and I just have two things. I thought open house was fabulous. A lot of teachers, and my daughter's teachers were there, so I thank all those teachers for being there. And then Dollars for Scholars is selling these nice little metal cups. Every dollar that we raise, the proceeds will go to a 2023 graduating senior. Nothing stays in-house, so if you want a cup, you can see Mrs. Resnick, or there are links that you can purchase NCAA, hockey, and some other sayings. You don't have to stick with the Lake Central, so thank you for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Mucha for board calendar future activities.
I just want to encourage everyone that we have some great sports teams and our students, that there's lots of clubs to join at every level, and we'd love to see our children involved in something. Mrs. Reby, what did you want to tell us about the golf team?
They were the DAC champions?
That's
Oh,
great news.
That's great to hear.
Thank you. And our next meeting will be Monday, September 19th.
Wonderful. And then with that, do we have a motion for
I
adjournment?
move for adjournment.
Motion by Mr. Marshall?
Second.
Second by Ms. Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.